Welcome, everybody, to the July 14th episode of Marketing Office Minutes with John Turino. Today, we have joining us special guest David Klein from RevCom, I believe it is, David?
Rev Local.
Rev Local, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
For those of you who haven't seen one of these broadcasts before, the whole idea is actually to have you log in via zoom.us and the link that's up on your screen there and actually join us in the conversation. I've noticed over the months that we've been doing this that there are a lot of people who are pretty camera shy, and sometimes they only lurk rather than log in. But in any case, you're welcome to join us in the live conversation and the live interactive questions. And then this session is being recorded, so at the end of it, I will be processing it through Zoom US and Movie Maker and putting it up on YouTube as a replay. So, without further ado there, let's chat with David here and ask you, David, tell me, to give us a 30-second elevator spiel. What is it you do and who do you do it for?
So the 30-second elevator spiel is we help local businesses with their entire web presence. So the showing up on the internet is not a matter of just your website or just your social media or just doing pay-per-click advertising, but all of those factors are an ecosystem that work together. So what our services that we provide are all of those things that I just mentioned, but ultimately the goal is to work with clients and to discover what their objectives are and help them accomplish that by managing their overall web presence.
Wow, okay. Yeah, you know, when you and I chatted a couple of weeks ago when we first met, we were talking a little bit about how Google is being used these days and how people research businesses to locate local businesses. Want to expound upon that a little bit?
Absolutely, and I'll reference if you want to, any of your viewers want to go onto YouTube and look for the Google Summit. There was a great meeting about a month ago. It's about an hour-long video that's great. But ultimately, Google recognizes the huge importance of local search. Right now, over 50% of searches now are being conducted on mobile phones, and a larger and larger percentage of the searches as they relate to businesses are around location, what people want to do, where they want to go, what they want to buy, what kind of decisions that they're making. So that is why Google has made some really significant changes to the search engine results page, not the least of which is that they are no longer serving text ads on the side of the page, which most people probably didn't notice. But the reason that they do that is that so much of the interaction between users and Google now is on mobile phones. So it's really, you know, you hear the term hyperlocal. I almost hate to say it because it's kind of a business, you know, it's a cliche a little bit, but it really is about connecting local consumers with what they're trying to do, what they're trying to buy, that type of thing.
No, interesting. So I didn't realize, I knew that Google had made some changes a while back where the people whose websites were not mobile friendly would not be picked up during mobile searches. It wouldn't affect desktop searches, but it did affect mobile searches. I didn't realize they had made that change from text ads to videos or graphics. Is it just graphics, or is it just videos, or?
Well, what I'm referring to is the text ads now no longer appear. If you're on a desktop device, you do a search and you get a page of text ads and map listings and organic links. There are no text ads on the right-hand side. So,
on a mobile device? Okay.
Right, and on the desktop, because that's how important having a good interface is or good experiences on the mobile phone, because Google no longer serves text ads on the right-hand side on the desktop. It just shows the importance that everything, it's not about, you know, you're having a desktop and a mobile. Really, it's all about mobile. It's all about having a good experience when a user is on a mobile phone. Make sure that that is accomplished, and then if the experience is good on a mobile phone, then it's probably easier to expand with a larger screen on a desktop.
I see. Okay. Well, you know, is that just for websites, or is it also for social media like your Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and stuff like that?
Well, even on the social media, what you'll see is that, because these are all for-profit businesses, even though their users use the services for free, obviously, but even with for Facebook, for example, a lot of their advertising now is in the main news feed. So when you're posting something on Facebook, typically only about 5 to 10% of your followers or likes actually receive that post. And one of the reasons such a small percentage of your followers see that post is because Facebook wants to leave room for people that are advertising in that news to be able to show up in the middle of the page for boosted posts and for actual ads.
So those are what you see as sponsored posts out there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Interesting. So when you're trying to figure out, what's working and what's not working, what would you suggest are good ways for people to measure the effectiveness of their advertising? And does it actually have to be advertising, or, do I have to put sponsored ads up on Facebook or pay-per-clicks up on YouTube, or can I use my social media mechanisms?
I would say, you should do it all. You should experiment with it all, because there's no perfect marketing mix. Every business is going to be a little bit different. But I would say this is that, a couple of good metrics, because, trying to attribute which advertising is working is the $1 million question. Nike and Ford and Toyota have been trying to figure that out, and they have unlimited resources. So for local businesses, it's even more difficult. But ultimately, I would make sure that you have Google Analytics.
Okay.
Set up in your website. If you don't ask your webmaster, they should know how to do that.
Right.
And then I just, try to keep things simple. Is just look at, the most simple metric is just how many unique visitors you have coming to your website. So if there's an increase in unique visitors, that has to be a positive thing. The more people coming to your website, then clearly the more chances that you have to do business with those people that are coming to your website. Right. There are certain pages on your website that are probably a little bit more conversion relevant. For example, people that are going to your directions page is really important. So that would be something that I would look at. So the first part of your question, as far as using social media, if you're using social media and you're directing traffic either to your Facebook page or to your native website, and you're seeing an increase in traffic, then I would say that's a positive thing and a good metric to use. And then the other thing from a metric standpoint is that a lot of companies, and I'll just, RevLocal certainly does this, but there's a lot of others that do it well, is that they use tracking numbers so that you're able to actually see which advertising sources are generating phone calls. And so if you have a vendor that you're doing either pay-per-click advertising or SEO, and they have the ability to track the phone calls, then that's a really good metric, because then you're using technology to determine which advertising is generating more inbound contacts, which ultimately is going to be a positive thing for your business.
Interesting. Yeah, when I look at the Google Analytics for my website at johnturino.com, I notice that I get most of my hits, not most of them, but there's a big percentage that come in directly to the calendar page as the first thing that people look at. Mm-hmm. And then once they've looked at the calendar page, they may go off to the home page, they may go to the about page, they may look for a product or a service. And some will come in at the home page, but immediately go to the calendar page. And Google Analytics really give you a nice view of the behavior of people who are visiting your website. You can find out all kinds of stuff, like what web browsers they're using and what countries they're located in, and all that sort of stuff. And then your point is well taken on tracking numbers. Advertisers on television have been using that trick for ages. Either they have a dedicated phone number for their particular ad campaigns, or they have a promo code that says, TV 58, which means it came from channel 58. Kind of thing. So you can actually embed those in your advertising and even in posts, couldn't you?
Absolutely. And the technology now has gotten to the point where there's actually what are called dynamic phone numbers. So, for example, if you have a vendor, again, that's managing your online advertising, then a different phone number will show up. Say if somebody comes in through Facebook, an organic link, or a paid a text ad. And so to the user, it's seamless. They're going to see a number and they just call it. But what it allows you as the advertiser to do is to be able to attribute which advertising sources are generating the most phone calls.
Okay. Well, now, when we talked last time, also, we were talking about how much people could spend or should spend, and you made the distinction between investing in social media versus investing or spending on digital marketing. Can you tell me a little bit about how you make that distinction?
Right. Yeah, social media it's an awesome tool. It's here to stay. But there's such literally a huge range of what you could spend. And I'll start with zero. And I would recommend for a lot of businesses, look, you should definitely have a Facebook business page.
Right.
You should be posting occasionally, but remember that social media, hence the name social media, it's not necessarily where people are searching or looking to make a decision. They're looking to do things typically that are fun, that they want to see pictures of their grandkids, they want to talk about their vacations, that type of thing. So on the I guess the entry level part of social media, just think of it as something that you should be doing to help build your audience. And if you're in a business like a restaurant or a bike shop or something that is somebody's hobby, then that, I would say, put more emphasis on that, because that's what people do for fun. They eat out and they ride bikes. If you're in a business that's not so fun, like a plumber or an auto mechanic, that's not a fun thing. It's life's realities. We need to get our plumbing fixed and our cars fixed sometimes, but we're probably not going to just for fun be searching on Facebook for tips on how to fix our car. So that would probably be less of an emphasis. So to answer your question on social media, the more avocational, I hate to use the big SAT word there, but the more fun your business is, then the more energy, both resources, time, and money you should be putting into social media.
Okay, well, that's a great distinction, David. I hadn't thought of it that way in the past. I know that, when people ask me, what's the best strategy, I always tell them it depends.
It always depends.
And it's always, people think that's the consultant's cop-out, but it really isn't. I mean, it really does depend on your overall strategy and who it is you're selling to and what message you're trying to get across to them and what media you think is the best to do that. Okay, so you started from zero. What would you say in terms of the average marketing dollars or average advertising money that the small to medium-sized business does spend on digital marketing, digital advertising?
So just a really rough rule of thumb, just kind of from business schools, is that about 3 to 5% of your gross revenues should be invested back into marketing. And so that's everything from the time you spend posting to the money that you spend on pay-per-click advertising, the amount you spend with your webmaster to update your website. I mean, all of that, what you spend on trade shows, brochures, all of that falls into that bucket. So if you're a $100,000 business, then you should be spending about $3,000 to $5,000 on marketing. As a very rough rule of thumb. And then to answer your question, I'm biased. I'm not, because I do digital marketing, but look, I think direct mail still has a place out there. I think if you're a multi-location business and branding is really important, restaurants, for example, is going to be important. Radio and TV should still be potentially part of that marketing mix. So I always encourage people to remember that we all get hit with thousands of advertising messages every day, and it's a very complex ecosystem. It's difficult to stand out. And so I would say start with a budget that 3 to 5% of your gross revenue should be getting invested in marketing as a general rule. And then I would work with, and think of it as it's a collaboration, just as a rule of thumb. Some of it should definitely be spent on digital, and then there are certainly places where you should be experimenting with some offline marketing, because people don't just live online; they do spend some time offline. So, to answer your question, like you said, the consultant's cop out. It does depend, but ultimately, start with a budget. Pick a plan, and then, we talked about metrics earlier. Is I always ask people, what does success look like? So if you're we'll just say $1 million business, and you've got say a $50,000 a year budget, so you're spending about $4,000 a month. what do you want to get out of that? How many new clients do you need to get? How much new revenue do you need to generate? So really drill down and ask yourself that question. And then from there, you could say, this is what the goal is. It's something that's very measurable. And then you analyze it at the end of 30 days or at the end of 90 days. And then you're probably going to make changes based on the analysis, the goals that you've set.
Yeah, one of the things I see clients do all the time is fall prey to the shiny object syndrome, or the tactic of the day syndrome, without having put a strategy together, and more importantly, not having put a mechanism for measurement together. I mean, I used to teach in the electronics world. I taught design for test, and I got involved with all the quality people and stuff like that. And Dr. Deming in the 40s or early 50s said, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And I think the social media folks, the digital marketing suppliers, the Infusionsofts and the Marketos and people like that are providing the mechanisms to do those measurements just to justify their own existence and the investments in them. But if you don't set up the measurement mechanisms in the beginning, it's very difficult to tell what's working and what's not, other than the bottom line, which says, okay, my revenue is increasing, I'm picking up more clients. And that really is, that's the bottom line for it. But you'd like to know what's causing that increase to happen, so you can do more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff.
Right. And I would add to it is that the other thing with especially digital marketing is that a lot of it you can do yourself. I mean, you can do your own social media posting. You can do your own pay-per-click advertising. You can design your own websites. And I tell people all the time that you could do it, but you could also change your own oil, and you can also do your own taxes. Is that really the best use of your time, A? And then B, do you really have the expertise to do that? So I always encourage people, look, you want to be frugal, you want to be as efficient as you possibly can, but is it real? If you're a small business and you're posting on Facebook once a week, and that's something that's helping your business, do you need somebody to help you further that? Probably not. I would say keep going. But if you've got a multi-location, 4 or 5 restaurants, you need to be posting daily and tracking and doing both paid advertising and the generic and the organic posting. That's probably something where hiring an outside vendor is going to, at the end of the day, generate better results than trying to do it yourself.
Yeah, having been a small business owner for a goodly portion of my life, I am intimately familiar with the issues involving stuff that I don't know how to do, or am not expert at, or just keep doing. One of those, accounting, I think, is something that most small business owners are not, very good at or willing to do a lot of, which is why the CPAs, when they see a shoebox come in, the dollar signs light up in their eyes. And they know that it's going to be a big bill just because nothing has been done.
Right.
And, I recommend to people, look, if you don't know, if you're not expert at it, or you don't want to do it, outsource it.
Yep.
It may seem a little more expensive at the beginning, but if you think about the cost of doing things over versus doing them right the first time,
right,
there really is an economy in getting it done right the first time, and having somebody who really knows what they're doing take care of it for you, so you can focus on what your main things are.
Yeah, and I think people greatly, they underestimate the amount of time that it really does take. So just to, we'll stay on the social media conversation, is that, the first few posts that you do, it's fresh, it's new, you're just hitting like the things that are top of mind. But to be consistent, it becomes more time consuming, more difficult to produce quality content depending on either day in and day out, week in and week out. And so there's a huge opportunity cost when you're being distracted away from actually executing what you're doing in your business to then do digital marketing. I think that creates more of an opportunity cost than it's given credit for.
Yeah, I mean, I know from personal experience that social media can be a tremendous time sink. And just, you pop up onto Facebook for 5 minutes and you're there an hour. You lost a whole
Been there
hour's
and done that.
productivity. It happens all the time. So it's something that has to be looked at and monitored. And I do, social media posting for clients and stuff like that, and try to create new content for them. And I know just how tough that is.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not something that most people really enjoy doing. So
Right.
yeah, it's kind of like public speaking. People hate standing up in front of the world. They're scared of it. And I think when it comes to writing marketing materials and doing marketing activities, a lot of people feel the same way.
Sure.
Well, that's interesting. We were talking earlier about Google. Let me revisit that a little bit and ask you, what are some of the specific suggestions you might have for people on improving their overall online visibility?
Sure. So let me just start by saying, when you go to Google and you do a search, we'll just say, plumber Beaverton. So you do that search, and when you look at that page, it's important for people to realize what you see on that page are 3 completely different algorithms that determine the results that you see on that page.
Okay.
At the top of the page, that's what's called Google AdWords.
Okay.
And those are the text ads, and that's an auction. So you hear a lot of times people say that they buy keywords, which is really not correct, because you don't buy the keywords, but you bid on them. And you tell Google, if somebody clicks on that ad, I'm willing to pay X amount. So at the top of the page, it's Google AdWords, it's an auction.
Wow.
In the middle of the page, and really what takes up a big section of the page now, are what's referred to as the Google Maps section, or local search. So we've all seen those maps or those push pins. That's a separate algorithm, and your location and how you're showing up in the directories is really important for that section. And then now at the bottom of the page is what's referred to as traditional search engine optimization. So the amount of backlinks that you have on your website, and the amount you're changing your content, the usability of your website. So think of that as that's more controlled by actually what's going on with your website. So to review, it's an auction at the top of the page, it's location based in the middle of the page, and then it's on-site search engine optimization at the bottom of the page. So again, so the answer to that question, there's 3 separate answers. So for brevity's sake, let me just talk about the map section, because if you're a local business and you want to be found, whether you're location specific or not, because a plumber is not location specific. Nobody goes to the plumber's office, but they want to know that they're in that town. I think a couple of things just right off the bat is make sure that your Google business listing is claimed,
Right.
and that all of the information is accurate. And there are certain things that you wouldn't think are important, but they're hugely important. And it's things like the hours that your business is open, the payment that you take, and any of those kind of details, again, to just make it easier to people for people to do business with you. Google recognizes that, and then they reward that good content by giving you a better chance to show up in that map section. I would also say, so definitely check your Google business listing, your Bing business listing. Bing still gets a ton of traffic. Facebook now Facebook will grab your data and create a business listing for you, but make sure that your Facebook business listing is claimed. And again, all of that information is 100% accurate. And the more details that you can put in there, the better, because what's happening is the more positive content that you're providing for those search engines, you're rewarded with higher rankings.
Now, that's interesting. I've been recommending for people for a long time, make sure you're on Google, even if you're not location-based, and Google ran a big campaign, and they still run it, I guess, to some extent, about get your business online.
Yep.
Because those listings are free, and they actually also reward other people for going in and putting in corrections. Because I get a few rewards from Google for doing that when I find something that's incorrect in somebody else's website.
Yep.
I find a mistake. And it goes back to making sure your profile is as complete as possible, if you will.
Yep.
When you go to LinkedIn, for example, it wants to make sure your profile is complete and you've used as many of the 25 or 30 sections as possible. And I think when you're talking about, your hours of operation, your location, your payment mechanisms, do I take checks or cash or plastic? Those are, again, more content that you're adding and more completeness to your profile. Same way I think with adding photos and adding an introductory video. I think that YouTube is actually you're like 5 times more likely to be found first on YouTube than you are in Google proper.
Right. Well, and it gets back to my earlier comment about it being an ecosystem. So in order to show up in that map section, your website's important, your Google business listing is important, but those are just 2 factors out of literally hundreds. And you just brought up a really important one. Having a YouTube channel is important, again, because what Google is trying to assess. So if somebody's looking for a plumber in Beaverton, there's 50 plumbers in Beaverton, or 100, or whatever the number is. Well, there's only 3 that will show up on the first page of Google in the map section. So the question becomes, how does Google decide who are the 3 people, the 3 businesses that show up? And it's not luck. Google says, okay, who is going to provide the best experience for that particular searcher? And so that, by the way, is a sweet spot of what I do and what RevLocal does, is that, to your point, is first of all, making sure that information is up to date is the first step. But again, it's just the first step in the journey, because you have to continually update that information in order to make sure that you're showing up as opposed to the other people that would want to show up for that same search query.
Okay, David, a little bit further on that. Tell us a little bit more about the services that RevLocal does provide.
Sure. So what we just were talking about is we help businesses show up in that map section by performing some of the services that we just talked about, is creating your YouTube channel, constantly updating not only your Google listing, but also your Yelp listing, your Bing listing. And there's a whole ecosystem of literally hundreds of directories that we've all probably been on those sites, but we don't really think that they're related to a Google search. Things like MapQuest, DexKnows, Yellow Pages, City Search. I mean, these are all sites that, as we're searching on the internet and we see an organic link for a business that we're interested in, you go and it's a city search listing. All of that fits together. So just ultimately deciding for the businesses, okay, you want to show up in the map section for A, B, and C search terms. We help businesses do that. We also manage a lot of paid search. So at the top of the page, that Google auction, we help businesses manage that Google auction and make sure that they're showing up for the right words, that they're getting good conversions, and then also that their paid ads can show up on Bing and Facebook as well. And then finally, we also provide social media services as well.
It sounds like you and I need to sit down and have a one-on-one. The last time I did a search for John Turino Marketing Connections, there's still probably 5 or 10 obscure search engines out there that have an old phone number for me that hasn't been in use for like 5 or 6 or 7 years, and trying to get in there and claim those things and prove that it's your business. It's like a real pain in the rear end.
It's a pain in the rear end, yes, sir.
You go to somebody like Yelp, they want $1,000 to go in there and fix those listings, and that's like, wait a minute, if somebody can't come to johnturino.com, then they're not smart enough to be my client in the first place. So
yeah,
I sort of feel a little bit like that. But all right, well, David, thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise with us this morning on this whole interesting topic. I'm sure that we could probably go into it for hours and hours.
I do love it. Yeah.
We don't have time to do that. We're coming up on 9:30 here, so we're almost out of time. But before we do that, one of the things that I always do at the end of these broadcasts when I take them through Movie Maker and before I put them up on YouTube is I put our contact information in there.
Sure.
How best to reach you and how to reach me. So tell us about the best ways to reach you at RevLocal.
Of course. So it's David Klein, Klein. It's revlocal.com, REV as in Victor, local.com. My email address is dklein, Klein, at revlocal.com. And my phone number is 503-592-0627.
Okay, super. I will make sure that we get that information in there, and we will go from there. Any parting comments or last bits of advice you'd like to provide for those who are watching the replay for this?
I would just say that remember, digital marketing, it's an ecosystem and it's something that's always evolving. So I would say, rather than, as you talked about, don't necessarily choose the shiny penny, but choose a relationship, a partner that's going to be talking to you about what your metrics and your goals are, and work with that person and realize that some things will work and some things won't. But if you've got good measurements in place, that you'll be successful.
All right. Well, that's super. Well, thank you again, David. I really appreciate you making the time and the effort to join us today. And as I say, I'll have this replay up later in the day. You're obviously welcome to use it and share it. And then I'd encourage you to share that as widely as you can. I'd like to get people to watch not only yours, but also the other replays that are interesting in there. I think there must be over a dozen of them now over the last 3 months. We've got another one coming up next week that'll be talking mainly about sales tips and networking tips. Ken Rosengren from Ken's Home Team Realty is going to be on. And then our final broadcast for July will be on the 28th, and that's going to be Ryan Snyder talking about video intros and some of the tricks you could use to make it more likely that somebody would watch something on your YouTube channel. So we're trying to provide that kind of value and information. But in any case, we'll call this to a close. Again, thank you very much, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you, John.
Join us next week, July 21st, where our special guest will be Ken Rosengren.